Cavecast, the uncensored show for nerds of all kinds.
So I did something yesterday that I thought that I would never be able to do in my life. And it may sound dumb to people that do this on a regular basis, or, you know, that they don't view it in the way that I used to. And maybe I still kind of do. But I know you guys can probably see the books that are over here, but this red one, that is Stephen King's It. I, for the first time in my life, have finished that book. I'm going to be doing a review of it over on Riker Road, but that's not what this video is about. This podcast is about finishing things, seeing things through. A little bit of history is that I loved the miniseries so much. Tim Curry is the reason why I love scary things. I remember like my very first memories of being a kid, besides the toys that I played with and, you know, the interactions with my grandparents and my great grandparents that are no longer here. You know, the normal things like, you know, that you experience as a kid when you first embrace consciousness. Stephen King's It, the miniseries, is one of my main memories that I have of seeing Pennywise the clown inside of the grave and him, you know, doing the whole Billy Boy, you know, moment. So from a young age, I had a fascination with this movie. And as I got older, I understood that it was a book first. I understood that there was a broader, bigger story than what I was used to, and, you know, compared to what I had taken in, you know, from this, you know, 2-part miniseries that could barely scratch the surface of what this, you know, story really had in store for people. And once I moved in with my Aunt Heidi, my mom and I both did, after my parents got a divorce, that's where I ended up going, was with my mom and my Aunt Heidi. And my Aunt Heidi always had this library inside of her office. I call it that because as a kid, you know, I was so little, and I would look up at these bookshelves and I would see Stephen King's, you know, The Skeleton Crew, or I would see It, or I would see all of her Dean Koontz novels, or like John Patterson, or, you know, I mean, what else that she had on there. I don't remember exactly, but I remember always looking up at it and seeing the cover with the storm drain and, you know, the claw reaching up to the paper boat. And I would read the first like 3 pages because I knew that I had read, you know, Goosebumps books. I had read, you know, I think a little bit of like Harry Potter later on, you know, and then eventually I did take in the series, but I wasn't a very avid reader until I got to like middle school. But even as a kid, I wanted to read that book, and I made the conscious effort eventually as a young adult, or as a young, you know, well, rather teenager, that I was going to borrow the book from my Aunt Heidi and I was going to finish it. I was going to read it. And it's also worth noting too, that at one point when I was a kid, my Aunt Heidi actually offered to read the book to me because I was so fascinated. Now, that never happened because realistically, to read a book like that to a kid, number one, is probably wildly inappropriate, you know, to a normal person. But she understood that I wanted to really understand, you know, the story. I wanted to know everything I could about it. But through the multiple times from when I was a teenager, even as an adult, when I had listened to the book, I always fell short. I never finished it. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was the daunting task of it. I don't know if it was because of the scene. If you know about the book, you know about the scene that's in the book that Stephen King has since regretted writing. Now I have a very interesting view on that, which I'll get into in my review, which will be, like I said, over on Riker. But I had a really hard time finishing that novel. Like, we're talking like 20 years that it was something that was always in the back of my mind that I knew that I never did. I never took care of. I never finished. And now that I've crossed that bridge, you know, that I've gone to the other side of it, It's really odd, the relief that I feel. I wasn't like necessarily like emotional when I finished it, but I was definitely in a place where I realized, wow, I did it. I set out to do something and I did it. And the more and more I thought about it, I thought back on creative projects, conversations, friendships, promises, all these things that I've started in my life that we're talking like, decades ago, that I realized, wow, I've never finished these things. And weirdly enough, finishing this book held a mirror to myself and made me understand something about myself, is that I have a very hard time finishing things. I took a college course when I was, trying to get into full-time ministry, when that was a part of my life, and just couldn't bring myself to finish papers. I didn't finish college. I just barely finished a short film that I made with my friends when I was in my early 20s, and hopefully it will never see the light of day because it was so terrible. It was essentially one of those film projects that was supposed to take a month, and then it took a year and a half, and it just ate away at me. And granted, I did finish that one, but it was kind of in the mentality of, I have to finish this. I couldn't, be apathetic with it. I couldn't just let it go by the wayside, especially because I had so many of my friends involved. So with where I'm at now and understanding that about myself, I felt like I needed to come on here and talk to you guys, because I hate the way that feels. I hate that there are things that I have not finished, that I've not seen through. Things that were supposed to bring me joy became too daunting. For instance, one of the things that I have attempted recently was to write 1,000 words a day, writing fiction. And I think I made it about 6 days. And I realized that I didn't know what I was doing. I went into it very ill-prepared. I had this grandiose idea of, man, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to do this with this, and this is so original, and no one's ever done anything like this before. And if anything, it kind of became like my Under the Dome. For anyone that doesn't know, is that Stephen King actually started his story Under the Dome, which is like this thick, right? It's huge. He started it, I think, damn near almost like 30, 40 years ago. And he said he had to put it in a drawer because it was just too big for him. He had to wait until he could do plenty of research and, organize his story and characters and put everything together the way that it should be to have a cohesive thing. And I think that says a lot about someone that's creative, that can understand, you know what, I need to take a step back and I need to wait. I need to wait for the right time. My problem is that I feel like I always have to wait for everything. Call it insecurity. Call it, just worrying that what I'm writing isn't good enough, or what I'm doing isn't good enough. It's a tough thing. Like, I feel like that I'm at a place in my life where I should have already gotten a lot done. Which is crazy to say because, Eric and I have achieved a lot, way more than we ever thought that we ever would, but even then, I mean, maybe it's just the human condition, but genuinely, I feel like that I should have already been successful with the things that I've been hungry for a long time. And especially with writing stories, I have so many stories that are in my mind. I have so many things that I am dying to get out there. And when I see, a story like The Running Man, it's a story that takes place over 30 days. And, the idea of someone being on the run the whole time, knowing that that's what the story is about, that it's, I mean, granted, there's a couple of movies, made about it, an old one and then a newer remake, or newer adaptation, I should say. But knowing that, it gives me anxiety where it's like, damn, like I could never do that. It makes me scared to start things. And I think that truthfully, the best thing to do for myself is to not start big projects. It's to start small things. Even this episode here, timing and how things are working out with how we make this show happen. It's like, now, like we've had to shift days constantly, with, the fact that Eric and I aren't able to be in the same room, whether it's because of my business trips or because someone's sick or weather happens, all those things. And I finally had to take this moment and stop and think to myself, you know what? No, don't worry about doing a full hour and a half episode. Don't worry about having 2 hours of just deep talks, because I mean, those things will happen and they can happen. I love talking deep with people, but I realized I needed to be successful in the small things before I am triumphant in the big, or even before I even can dip a toe into the deep water that I'm so apprehensive of, but I hunger for so much. And I don't know if the person that's listening to this on Spotify or watching this on YouTube is a creative person, but I would argue that I don't think that this is limited to a creative person. I don't think that you need to be a writer. I don't think you need to be a filmmaker. I don't think you need to be a YouTuber. I think that there are just times in our lives when it's really difficult to finish things. And it causes this subliminal anxiety that just doesn't go away. And, it's that whole, that thought of, well, I'm depressed and I'm tired and I'm this and it's that, this and this. And it's like, okay, well, have you been drinking enough water? Have you had a good, healthy balance to your diet? Have you been exercising? Have you been, edifying yourself, changing your thoughts about yourself? Have you been taking the time to practice? Have you, surrounded yourself with good people, with people that edify you, but also can knock the sense into you whenever you need it? I realized I needed to take better care of myself. I have the best emotional, physical, mental, spiritual support that I've had in at home that I've ever had. And it's something that, it feels like, that, man, like with like me having the best home life, I should be able to be triumphant and I should be able to be successful in my endeavors. And so when I've not been able to, it really confuses the fuck out of me, where I'm just like, dude, like, what am I doing wrong? Why is this so difficult? And I vocalized this. I vocalized this a lot, the other night to Crystal, where it was just really, really getting to me, like I'm not happy with how I've handled my creative side. I feel like that there are people that could do a way better job than me. And that's the boo-hoo story of everybody that's creative, is that it's, to know that there are writers out there that they, like, not to keep quoting Stephen King, but the fact that he threw Carrie away, and Tabby King was the one that pulled it out, wiped off the, ash from the cigarettes and, the beer off of it and read it and said, Stephen, this is really good. Like, you should keep going. I've been told that about certain things that I've done. And I've had that battle within myself of like, why isn't this enough? How will I know when I've hit it? How will I know when I've done the right thing? Because writing is really the thing that I would love to do. I would love to be able to take my crazy messed up ideas and put them out into the world and see what happens. But in the same hand, I think that it's the fact that I've just never successfully written something. And I'm not talking about being published. I'm not talking about, an editor saying, hey, good job, because there's no edits needed. Even the best writers need edited. It's a challenge for myself that I'm trying to be successful in the small things. And I want to encourage you guys to do the same. Right now, as you're listening to my voice and you're taking this in, if you've made it this far, I want you to think to yourself, what's something that I haven't finished? Why haven't I finished it? And should I? Because I think that that's also a fair question, because if you're pushing into something that you're just not ready for, then you're never going to finish it. And it will just push you deeper into a cycle of depression. But if there's a small win that you can give yourself, if there's something that you can do that will help you to reach a finish line that you thought that you never would, I want to encourage you to do that, because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take small things, and especially after making it through a behemoth like this 1,065, I think it was, 1,065 page book or whatever it is. It's over 1,000 pages. But I had that moment after I finished it that I went, wow, I really can read. I can read big books. If I can read big books, then I feel like I can do anything. Maybe it's dumb. There's bigger things in this world that are more important than the mental health of the creator. But I would argue that mental health is important no matter what it is. And I hope that it falls on your ears today and it blesses you. So thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Adios.